During this coronavirus outbreak, the United States has closed down its borders in order to prevent people who may be potentially infected with the coronavirus from entering the country and spreading the virus around. And I accept this policy. Uh, it's a prudent policy because obviously, if you have a pandemic, you want to restrict human movement and travel as much as possible, hence why we are now all under quarantine, or at least most of us have self-quarantined. But what is this situation teaching us? Well, currently it is teaching how much we need migrant labor. And if you don't believe me, go talk to the farmers and listen to what they have to say about how much they need migrant labor, because there are a lot less migrants working in the farms due to the border blockade, and they're dealing with a shortage of labor, and they're having a lot of difficulty harvesting their crops. And these farmers are actually worried that this could close down their farms. It could actually lead to their farms, which they have been owning for decades, to go out of business. Because the thing about harvesting is that when you harvest vegetables, you have to do it very quickly within a certain window of time. And if you miss this window of time, then your crops are going to rot on the vine. And we see this with fruit as well. So the crops have to be harvested very quickly and very efficiently. And this requires a very strenuous and vigorous workforce. And most Americans are not willing to do this type of labor, and so farms have been reliant on migrant labor, migrants who are willing to walk for miles and miles and miles and risk their lives in order to get here, cross the border, and to do this work in order to survive and to establish a better life as opposed to their lives back in their home countries. So CBS recently did a report on how farmers are desperately wanting more migrant labor, but the coronavirus policies are actually preventing this. So play the clip.
The coronavirus pandemic is hitting farmers hard. Some dairy farmers are being forced to dump their milk instead of selling it because there's little demand, with restaurants and schools closed. Other farmers are struggling to harvest their crops, which could affect what you'll see at the grocery store. Foreign labor, mostly migrant workers, filled more than 250,000 jobs in the U.S. last year. As Mark Strassman reports, harvest season is here, but there are not enough workers.
You're looking at one of Georgia's biggest farms, 7,000 acres, more than a dozen crops that help feed America. In this cabbage field, we found farmer Bill Brim walking with his worries.
This coronavirus has got everybody so stirred up.
Does it keep you up at night?
Oh yeah, I sleep about 2.5, 3 hours a night.
Seasonal foreign labor, mainly from Mexico, always harvests Brim's crops. But this spring, he could be 200 workers short. The coronavirus crisis has delayed the U.S. government's processing of their work visas. Bill Brim's facing a series of harvest deadlines. First one is April 15th, and he's fields of squash. May 1st, it's cucumbers, and so on. And he'd better have his pickers in place.
When we start harvesting squash, we've got just days to pick it. So if our workers don't show up here on time, then we're going to be in real trouble.
It's not one of those things in life where you can say, I'll get to it next week.
No. No, sir. I wish we could.
70 miles away, Jeremy White is in bigger trouble. His blueberry crop is days away from harvest. He needs 100 pickers and packers. But they're stuck in Guatemala, where the borders are sealed because of the virus. Nobody in, nobody out.
We need them now. Absolutely, we need them now. As you can see, this fruit's turning blue and it's not waiting on anybody.
More than $1 million worth of blueberries could rot in the fields. He has no plan B.
Domestic labor just don't want to do this kind of work. It's unfortunate to say, but I mean, they just don't want to get out and do hard field labor anymore.
Gary Black is Georgia's Commissioner of Agriculture.
It is a reality. If there are not workers, there'll be crops that will go unharvested. And that has a ripple effect throughout this economy, and it will affect the consumers of this nation.
Bill Brim's worries go beyond his labor shortage. What if the workers he does have get sick? And restaurants usually buy 60% of his crops. Not this year. Not with so many restaurants closed. This big farm, how much money could it lose if this doesn't turn around?
It could devastate us. It could put us out of business, really.
35 years you've owned it.
Right.
And this could be it.
That's right. Could be it. Hope not. We hope and praying not. We're hoping this coronavirus will get out of here and we can go back to a little bit of normalcy.
Timing is now everything here. These crops can't wait. For CBS This Morning, Mark Strassman, Tifton, Georgia.
Now, this really contradicts the common American right-wing narrative that portrays these migrants as leeches to the system. And we can see by just listening to these farmers that these people are not leeches. They are, in fact, a necessary part of American society. And before you sit here and say, well, they're not Americans, it doesn't really matter, because the reality is that they are wanted. Their work, their labor is wanted. And America is an empire. Americans don't like to talk about this, nor do they like to really admit this, but the reality is that America is an empire. And these countries from which these migrants are traveling into the United States, these countries are under America's control. And the United States for decades has been implementing policies of regime change and also of arming certain political factions in these countries and causing actually a lot of destabilization and violence, especially in Central America and also in Mexico. So these people, although they are not American citizens, they are nonetheless subjects of the American empire. And the farmers of the American empire are desiring their labor. You can say that, well, this is against Americans, but these farmers are Americans and they are desiring this labor because apparently they can't really rely on their own people when it comes to this type of work. So one thing positive, and I've been mentioning a lot of different types of positive things that can come about from this coronavirus crisis, but one of the positive things that could come out of this is a deeper appreciation for migrants. And I hope that that will be the reality, but because so many people are brainwashed by right-wing radio talk show hosts and YouTube talkers, I doubt that will be the case, especially if you have so many people believing that the coronavirus is not even real, but that it is actually poisoning from Chinese 5G technology in our phones. So I doubt anything is going to change in the American political atmosphere. In fact, it's probably going to get worse because you are going to have charlatans blaming the coronavirus on immigration. And we've already been seeing a little bit of this, especially in Europe. But I can dream and I can wish. And I can at least have some hope that at least some people will change their views on this issue. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.